Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you to everyone who's here today. My name is Priyana Kalita. I'm an international student in Miami University. I play tennis for Miami University as well. I use she, they pronouns, and I started this web series called The Divergent Immigrant Experiences because of the things which went on for international students in July with the support of the Interfaith Center. I interned with the Interfaith Center during the summer, and I'm currently the student liaison and a member of the board of directors of the Interfaith Center. So the Interfaith Center mission is to cultivate relationships between people of diverse religious, spiritual, and secular worldviews. Now I'm going to introduce our speaker for the program today. Esther Maria Claros Berlioz got her PhD done at Miami University. Currently, she explores the intersections of immigration, schooling, and education. Having emigrated to the United States 17 years ago, her work centers the experience of youth who have emigrated from the northernmost countries of the Central American isthmus and the impact immigration and the impact of immigration law. Sorry about that. So yeah, without further delay, I would hand it to Esther.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you to the Interfaith Center. Thank you to my dear friend, Priyana, who has been the brilliant architect of this experience. And I'm so grateful to you. And I'm so grateful to all of you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. No worries. So thanks again to the Interfaith Center, to my dear Priyana, and to all the wonderful faces and names I'm seeing. It fills my heart in a way that I have a hard time putting into words. So I said in the description, I put down that I had emigrated here 17 years ago. To contextualize, I'm only 35 at this point. To contextualize that I was a kid. I was very young, and at the time I did it with the love and support of two amazing human beings that are my parents and my family, who had the opportunity of coming and joining me and dropping me off at a small liberal arts college and leaving me in a space that not only had welcomed me, had made a space for me, and I was off to my own adventure. But my experience is not even remotely close to that of countless siblings who are currently in this space, in this country, as immigrants, refugees, not just in the United States, but all over the world, who have found themselves having to make the choice of leaving home, sometimes with fear in their hearts, sometimes overwhelmed by the immensity of their decision, and always, always at a great cost to them and their families. So my work as a professional, as a critical scholar, a researcher, is informed by my life and by the love and respect I have for all of us who know someone, who love someone, who are someone that has left their home. So I've got a short presentation, as in PowerPoint, and I've got some notes. If you know me, you know that this is the work that speaks to my heart, speaks to the very soul of who I am, and I could talk for days. And also, I am often I subject myself to verbal confetti. So, out of respect for you and your time, I may be reading a little bit from some notes, but here we go, folks. So one cannot speak of, can you guys hear me okay? Are we good? Yep, okay. Okay. One can't speak of immigration without speaking of globalization. So there's a scholar, Orozco Suarez, speaks to globalization as the remapping of cities, indeed, entire countries and regions throughout the world. At this very moment, those borders, both man-made and those that are beyond our sight or touch, are being blurred. Globalization as a phenomenon is upheld by these three pillars. New information and communication technologies, here we are in these difficult times, and being able to connect with each other from all sorts of spaces in different locations, in different time zones, maybe different countries, and there's much to be celebrated in that. It also requires the emergence of the global market and acknowledgement of post-national knowledge-intensive economics. What is considered valuable? What is considered a commodity? What price does that have? And what is the cost of said thing? And what me as a person, me as a critical scholar, researcher, and community member, activist, is inspired by is how globalization spurs unprecedented levels of immigration and displacement. Immigrants are the face of globalization. And if you were to ask me about immigration, such a loaded word. There are thousands of voices that come to mind. There are thousands of names, of stories. There's texture. There's seasons to it. And I know that for many of you on this call today, in this session, that is also the case. Immigration is not, it's irrevocable from the human experience. Someone just asked me the other day, you know, what do you like to do for fun? And this is what I like to do for fun. I like to be informed and reading and watching videos, listening to experiences around the subject of migration, immigration, displacement, because it is eternal. It has been going on since the dawn of time. People have been relocating for personal reasons, for difficult reasons, for reasons of love, for kinship, for their dreams, their fears, to different parts of the world. And we can't forget that. It is also something that it takes a lifetime, right? I can say that I have been here for X amount of time, that my adulthood, the person that sits before you today, was developed in that process. And it is also something to be said that time is often, or it feels, and this is a personal opinion, time is often not the friend of someone who emigrates, especially when you can't go back home. There's a part of you that exists in every place that you've called home. You know, I lived in Pennsylvania for a long time. That was home. Where I grew up in Honduras, that was home. Where I lived in Honduras, that was home. All of those spaces, there's still a part of me that grapples with, when I left by choice, in great privilege and access and resources, living a lifelong dream of pursuing my education in institutions of higher ed here, I thought time would stand still, and it didn't. And my brothers grew up and they became parents. And my parents got a little bit more smile lines around their eyes, or smile lines around their mouth. With it came the silver hair, with it came the loss of dexterity, with it has come loss of friends, loss of family members, loss of opportunities, but also gains of inordinate amount, just like sitting here with you guys today, hearing from friends and support systems here about, good luck, wish you well, all of that. And I emphasize this because the person that emigrates is a person with a life, who is loved, who is wanted, who is worthy. And when they leave their homeland, by choice, by force, all of the above, they have to sever a part of themselves. I've given you a backstory into why I do what I do, but also to, if there is a few takeaways from today, I ask that we please remember that the personal is political, that which we consider the other, it doesn't affect us because we're citizens. It doesn't affect us because we've got permanent residency. It doesn't affect us because we have a visa. It does. It absolutely, positively does. Because one injustice done to one of us is an injustice done to all of us. And when we become complicit, compliant of said injustice, it falls on all of our hands. It's important to note that there's immigration policy, right? The overarching context of the federal immigration policy. And then there's immigrant policy as it pertains to the assimilation and welcoming of the immigrant sibling into a community. For example, immigration policy relates to the entry and exit of a person, the regulation of the bodies of those foreign-born who cannot reclaim permanence in the form of citizenship or permanent residency, and whose bodies are under the strict purview of the government. And then there's immigrant policy, as it speaks to the individual person or persons, and that relates to integration. So, for example, immigration policy speaks to the number of refugees allowed in the country. Temporary protected status, for example, as is the case with El Salvador, Honduras, and that folks who were given that special status as a result of civil war, as a result of natural disasters, and all of a sudden, folks who have moved here, who have lived here for 20 plus years, who have made a life here, who have fallen in love, who have bought houses, who have become intrinsically woven into the fabric of not just their family life, but the lives of so many others, are now being told, hey, your time is up. You should have never fallen in love. You should have never dreamed that you could stay. You should always sleep with one eye open, because it could end. For example, with the CARES Act and families where a family member has an irregular legal status, or who have not not been eligible to change that status, or even those who are mixed status families. Those families, COVID hit them just as hard. That is a shared reality we all have, and yet there was little to no solace for them. Continues to be the case. When you talk about immigrant policy, speaking of the person, Cincinnati prides itself in saying that it's a sanctuary city. How different states offer our siblings who have an irregular legal status the option of securing a driver's license. Institutions, even some institutions in different states offer financial aid for students with an irregular legal status, so they could live up their dreams of pursuing a degree through higher education. You'll hear me say regular versus irregular. Versus irregular, I take that word and I say, let's unpack it further. Regular and irregular, as a person's legal status there's a degree of fluidity to it. I myself have transitioned from various legal statuses and back to another. Again, privilege, access, and acknowledgement that my compliance and complicity, my investment in whiteness has allowed me to do this. Whether I knew it or not before I had the language, in doing so, my life was made a little bit easier. Not a little bit, a lot of bit easier. And what does that mean? And why is that not the same reality for so many others? Okay. The fact of the matter remains that race has a great deal to do with it. There is no speaking of the history of this country without speaking of race. We know that in this country, this hemisphere, and in the world's history, inflicting, condoning, and even fostering violence on human beings based on their race is a reality. We should be mindful of our degree of comfort in allowing this to remain so. The echoes of the voices against those of our siblings whose innate dignity has been violated exists in this very moment. If you're quiet long enough, their name, their face will come to mind. And what goes too often hand in hand with that realization is the criminalization of their bodies. A person that is both racialized and criminalized is made ineligible for personhood. And thus, their bodies, their existence is beholding to laws that were not made for them. And they are denied the political legitimacy and moral credibility to question said laws under which they are governed. We have to ask ourselves, why is that the case? We are interconnected, and there's no denying that. And I think we often forget. My work centers, I said I've been here since I was, I just turned 18. It hadn't even been a year since I had turned 18. I came here with the dreams of a child. I was naive. I was unknowing of what I would walk into a space where my body would be read, measured, often found wanting, and I had no idea what the parameters of that were. And to think how far all these years later, I'm now just starting to find the language and truly immerse myself in the history of this space, in the history of my region of origin, of my country of origin, and how much more there is to go. I consider it a privilege, and I also consider it my duty, because in order to change the system, impact the laws, and have powerful conversations about why things are the way they are, we first need to be students. We need to learn how to listen, and we need to learn how to engage, because we can't not afford to keep seeing that as somebody else's problem. We cannot keep othering ourselves and washing our hands of the conflict, because that means we are siding with those oppressors. Thank you.
Um, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
So now is the time for questions. If everyone, sorry. Did I get cut off? Sorry about that.
Just for a tiny bit.
Okay, now is the time for questions. So there will be multiple ways you can ask a question to our speaker. So the first way is you can use the hand raise button on Zoom. Does everyone know how to do it? So you can go to the participants, and I feel like you'll see the options of thumbs up, hand raise. Yeah, can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, and then the next option is you can leave the letter X on the chat box, and I can call on you. And if anyone wants to be anonymous, then I have a Google form that I'll put the link on the chat box, and they can use the Google form to ask questions, and I'll read it out. Does that sound good?
Oh, your screen's back on, bud. You're back on. It just got stuck for a
Can
tiny
everyone
bit.
hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. So where did I get cut off exactly?
You were explaining, you were asking if people knew how to use the raise your hand button, and that they could also send it via the chat.
Okay, and then another method is I will put a link of the anonymous Google form. So if anyone wants to remain anonymous while asking questions, they can put the question there and I'll read it out. So yeah, the floor is open for questions now, if anyone wants to go first. Okay, Samantha Searles, did I get it correctly?
You did.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, y'all. It's the weekend, and I look a little bit of a mess. I know Esther fairly well, but this is the first time I've really heard you share um, your story, and I just wondered, like, what is one thing that one or two things, if you can't pick one, what is one thing that you just wish people knew about being an immigrant in the United States?
Ah, Sam, I love you. That's a great question, and I'm so appreciative of it, because I think about this all the time. If I had a wish list, I think that people often, they don't contextualize why people emigrate, right? They will read whatever, and the news and the media often paint a picture. So ask yourself, whose story are you reading? What is their voice? What is their positionality in writing these stories? Because the person that's writing them, the person who is working on that, has their own voice and their own stance. And as much as they would try to remove themselves in the case of being neutral, there is always more information, more to know. So I think that for me, one of the things that's been most enlightening and humbling is how little I understood about my own country's history and everything that has to do with how a person ends up here. Everything from the decision to the logistics to the journey. They don't magically teleport. It is a process, and it is these complicated chapters in their lives. And I think that people don't understand the context and everything that comes with making that decision. And that would be one thing. And the other thing is that immigration law, as you and I have seen it evolve away from something humane towards something that is cruel and essentializes experiences and is literally just cementing trauma and ineligibility for a fuller life in so many aspects, right? In so many varying degrees, that people have a say, and they don't consider it their problem. It's like, well, it's happening to somebody else, especially for children. Well, that's somebody else's child. I am here by the grace of God, and because I had amazing colleagues like yourself, amazing people that have become my family, who have made sure to take care of me, somebody else's child in their eyes, or not your eyes, but in like the eyes of so many other people. And my parents give thanks to that every day, because there is always somebody that says, God, please take care of my loved one. Please make sure that they're okay. And so we are in it together. And if people don't realize it, that not only makes me tremendously sad, but also they're missing the bigger point that this is happening to all of us all at once. Thank you for the question, Sam.
So we have a question on the anonymous Google form. So the question is, with everything going on now, besides educating ourselves, what ways can we advocate?
Vote. Please vote. Vote. Make sure that everybody votes. This is not something that comes around. Oh, I'll just wait. I'm just going to sit here and wait. I'm just going to sit here and, my vote doesn't count. Please, your voice matters. Your neighbor's voice matters. Vote. Take ownership of your education outside of schooling and use that voice in the advocacy and the dignity of other human beings, because we are all part of this beautiful, diverse world, and we need to make sure that we are reaching out and making it a priority to take care of current and future generations of kiddos.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question. Okay, we have a question from Ayana White. Okay, yeah, Ayana is just asking for the Google form link. I'm sorry about that, but yeah.
Thank you, Ayana.
That means that we'll have more questions, I think so. Yeah, we have another question actually. Um, Among my friends and peers, I have noticed a lot of battle fatigue and feelings of being overwhelmed mentally and emotionally by our current global and national circumstances. Do you have any advice for this, for staying present and motivated while taking care of yourself?
Thank you so much for that question. I think the first one is surrounding yourself with colleagues that love you unconditionally and just accompany you through the process, right? Through that fatigue. I know that I have, in my own personal journey, I've found myself shying away from folk um, in a way that I didn't want to bring whatever was going on in this body, in this mind, to others. But the truth is, a lot of it came from feeling alienated and feeling like maybe perhaps I was wrong to feel the way I did, or I just couldn't verbalize it. I guess I didn't give it time. I think finding those that love you unconditionally is the first step. But equally important is loving yourself and making the time and the space to celebrate you. If that means, for me, if that means um, reading an article and making notes and writing all sorts of little things because it brings me joy, I do that. And then celebrating that joy with someone else. Like, oh, I've read this article, let me send it to you. Also, making the time to be in nature, soaking up that sun, soaking up the beauty that is right outside our door in so many ways. It comes down to love, really. Surround yourself with it, but also make sure to give it to yourself. And it comes in different ways. It could be watching your favorite show for the 18 millionth time and finding that one piece of dialogue that you didn't see before, or writing a letter, or it varies, but making sure to give love because that love finds its way back to you and it fills your cup.
Well, thank you so much for the question and the answer. We have another question on the anonymous form. Um, what is something that would make you hopeful for the future of immigrant experiences in the US?
I know I keep talking about kiddos, but that's my center. That's my epicenter. Um, I work at a local nonprofit, and I am a proud board leader in other nonprofits that advocate, among many things, centered in social justice, on the experience and the human dignity of our siblings who and community members who are here having emigrated from elsewhere. Youth, youth and their beauty, youth and their resilience. And I was just reading The Little Prince today. In the foreword, the author apologizes to children for dedicating the book, this timeless book that many people have read over and over, to an adult. And he goes on to say why he chose an adult. And he says a line there that has always sat me down. All grown-ups were children first, but few remember it. And so I see young ones take care of their parents, support their parents. Often they're put in a role where they're adultified, and that's difficult and unfair. But they are seeing that immigration experience, that immigrant experience, even if they were born here, that is the lens through which they see the world. And I know in my soul that there's a change in the tide, that young folk of every age, but young folk especially, are learning from all the lessons of those that came before us and are taking a stand and are fighting and are saying, no more, not again, or not without you hearing me tell you my opinions about it, which is powerful. It is something I feel we should continually encourage, because children are agents of change, and we often do not give them enough credit. But man, oh man, they watch, they see, they absorb, and I'm convinced they're going to make this whole universe a better place.
Okay. We have another question on the anonymous form. So, how do I provide support for my friends who are experiencing xenophobia or feeling unwanted because they are an immigrant or come from an immigrant family? I feel like there's nothing I can do, but I want to do something.
Thank you so much for sharing. My dear, there is no price you can put on just accompanying them. It's notion from liberation theology. Archbishop Oscar Romero was a huge proponent of it. I actually first came across the term. We had lost the matriarch of our family, and people would be coming up and saying, we'd say, thank you for being here. And they would say, we're here, aquí estamos, acompañándolos. And that word just stuck in my head, and somehow, some way, it ended up taking me to other things related to this. As someone who is grappling with their own legal status and who has had the impact, right, that pressure, sitting with someone and just saying, I love you. I love you here. I love you to the moon. I love you back all the way over to Saturn. I love you. I am here. I will be here, and I will make sure that my feed, whatever comes up on your feed, that you are aware, because there's really bad days that have happened where things are being passed, and it just further complicates a situation for somebody that is feeling rejected or feeling left out. There is ample proof of how racism, nativism, just bigotry and hatred run rampant, and how it's condoned, and how often it feels like we are not moving forward. But there's one thing to take a step forward, or try to, alone, and there's a whole different thing to be acknowledged and seen, and have someone walking with you and acknowledging your pain, because we're in it together. I know that I've said it a couple times. It really often having that person say, I'm here for you. I will figure out ways, whether it's the logistics of, in my case, the logistics of having to relocate. Okay, you can leave your stuff at my house. Okay, I found out that you can sell your car through this. And just helping with the things that make the situation even more overwhelming, to, I'm coming out to take you for a cup of coffee, and we're going to go for a walk. And if you want to just be upset, be upset. I'm just going to listen, and I'm going to absorb that. And when the time comes for you to put your grain of sand towards building something different, reimagining a different situation where they would feel less so, or not feel that at all, then you have the lived experience of being able to do that.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for that question. And for sure, I mean, it's sometimes I would like to add to that actually. Sometimes what happens is people fail to see xenophobia as a segment of racism, which is, according to me, like, we all have to do better in that because, you know, um, sometimes just, asking someone how they're doing can do a lot because, they might be going under so much pressure, but they might be maintaining this shield outwards because you cannot show that you're weak. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what. Just sit down, have coffee, probably ask, annoy them a bit because it makes them feel that you are there for them. So yeah. Mhm.
Agreed, my friend. Absolutely. And if they say they're not okay, don't ask the question unless you're willing and ready to hear that they're not. And let them guide you as to if they want to be upset, just be there. You may not be able to change it, but just ask with intention and your open heart to accept whatever they have to share and help them process, as well as take it as an opportunity to grow and learn alongside them.
Okay, so we have another question on the forum. Um, how should we deal with people in class who are ignorant and say things like "go back to where you came from" and claim that all people coming from a certain country are gang members or in quote gang members or something? It seems that the president has made things like this seem okay, and now people feel entitled to say such things.
Ooh, okay. The first is to hear them go on whatever tangent they want to go down, because oftentimes that tangent is not based on actual facts. It's often based on fear, um, concepts they've learned from somebody else without actually having evidence, or preconceived notions because they read something off of somebody that thought, and they took that person's word or concept or rumblings as fact. It should not be tolerated that people would try and demean someone's innate human dignity. It is upsetting. It's frustrating. When I've been in that situation, I usually ask, where is this coming from? Where did you hear that from? And there's, I guess it depends on the context of where you are. It's never okay. Never okay. It is also a matter of having further conversation around where they're coming from, why they feel that way, where they heard it from, and say, let me tell you what I know. And so there's, Freire talks about this critical consciousness raising. If we just let them go to town and let them just spew, they might as well be spewing in front of a mirror. They're not growing. It's when we are able to take a moment, articulate, and provide that complementary counter conversation that there is some way, somehow, that it will make them pause, even if for a second. If anything, whether or not they're receptive, a person doesn't have control of that. Oftentimes, people are not. But that should not be a loss for you as the person trying to engage them in conversation. Rather, be prepared because it's going to happen. And when it does, how do you appeal to their better self, to their human self? How do you break it down to, it's not this thing, it's not these, they're function off fear, misconceptions of reasoning why. There's a specific term, it's called aporophobia, which is fear of the public charge, fear of the needy. All of these things actually sustain nativism, right? Is they're coming to take, they're coming to hurt, they're coming to change. Why are you afraid of all that? What do you think you have to lose? And let me tell you what you have to gain, right? Moving away from deficit and actually focusing on asset.
Yeah, that is completely true, because I would like to add a bit, because the thing is that, when we come here, we come with a goal, but we don't come with any, what should I say, any backup plan. We come with a goal of being the best, because we have to be the best to make a space in the American society. That is something which I have experienced and a lot of my friends have experienced. So, I mean, yeah, the thing is that, in the end of the day, people work to earn money for their families, and they don't care what work that might be, you know? And can anyone
You're back.
sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, in the end of the day, us immigrants, we, we come here for a brighter future, and then, yeah, it's just that the society needs to look deep into why the stereotypes exist. So yeah, that's what. Okay, we have another question. I am ignorant to the struggles of immigrants on the personal level. What are some everyday thoughts and experiences of someone who is an immigrant to this country? Things that outsiders don't see.
My friend, I thank you for joining our conversation. I think that's always the first step. Because trust me, I didn't come to this country to study or to expand on migration. That was not that I came and I majored in something because my big brother told me it was a good idea. It was never, it kind of, we chose each other as a result of lived experiences. So it varies. It varies based on country of origin, condition of what led their migration here, right? If it was a regular status, an irregular status, if it was asylum seeking, if it was having already been granted asylum and given refugee status. There's a myriad of experience. It's so, the word that comes to mind is exquisite. To essentialize it as one thing, I would be doing it a disservice of the greatest scale. But it is happening not just to the United States, and it's not happening to it, but it's happening in the realm of the United States. Individuals choosing to relocate here. But around the world, pick a continent, and you will find stories of our siblings who are choosing that as their new home. So it could be, as if you want to start at a local level. Cincinnati has a very, very rich history with migration, but also relocation from different parts of the world. And then you could look at, the Rust Belt. Ohio is a non-traditional destination site, but it is becoming, personally, it's becoming, my research and my experience is, it is a blossoming into a Central American diaspora. So that's what I gravitate towards because of where I was born and what I see and who I collaborate with. But it is from all over the world in all different spaces, and it varies. So one could be a student of it till kingdom come. But that's the thing, it always has to do at the very core with people and their desire for something. And it's a beautiful thing. So it's, I guess that's it. The one common thread is people and their magnificence.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great question and love the response. That's what. Um, we have another question, and actually, that's very personal to me. Um, what was your reaction to the bill that stated that international students who attend a college in the US are not allowed to come back unless they have in-person classes? How is this legal, or what we can do to help or make change?
You want to take that one, Priyana?
Sure. I mean, if you want me to.
You
So,
started, and I'll do the other part.
yeah, for sure. So when that came out, I remember I talked to our program director, Geneva. We were talking about it, and I was for sure really frustrated because the law stated that if international students couldn't find an in-person class college a, or like decided to attend online classes or their college went online, we would have to leave in 10 days. That was stated in the law. I still have a screenshot. And then, I mean, the thing is that immigrants or anyone related to immigration, we don't have much power. So the thing is that yes, 10 days, yeah. So the thing is that when one thing I would like to say is like vote, because your vote affects so many people in this world who come here just for a brighter future. And in order to this was not right, the bill was not right. So I spoke at a Black Lives Matter protest, actually pointing out to the fact that, see, this year our president and the government has banned work visas, has banned asylum for refugees who come from war-torn countries, and now the law is telling us to go back if our college is to go online in a global pandemic. Yeah, that's what I mean. It was really frustrating. It was good week of stress because I, along with so many people, didn't know what was tomorrow going to be like. Will ICE call us? Will, Miami or any other colleges go online? It was just uncertain. And then we were lucky that the judgment was on our side, but still, asylum seekers are struggling. Work visa holders are struggling. It's just something which can be better if the people who have the ability, or should I say privilege, to vote. That's what.
Brianna, you said it so well. My first impression, the word that came to mind was cruel. Cruel, not just for the international scholar, but for their parents, their family members, their loved ones in different time zones all over the world, trying to figure out how to navigate that support to their loved one in the time of a pandemic, when flights aren't even. So being an international student, there is the primary avenue pathway is an F1 visa. Just to secure one of those, like let's put that into context. Just to secure one of those, you have to go through a vetting process that takes months, if not years. You exist in the space. Your body, your movements are affixed to an institution. If said institution cannot provide the support, or everything has to do with where you can work. If you drop a class and you are under, like, everything is so, it goes to the immigration policy, is so closely monitored. It is such a huge investment, not just monetary, because it is, but a huge investment up front, but mentally, emotionally, physically. Imagine trying to have that conversation with a partner. Imagine trying to have that conversation while it's your senior year and you're a student athlete and you are dealing with COVID, not to mention, what is life after this? Because I have to apply to jobs, I have to apply to grad school. Now the funding has been cut. Pardon me. It was cruel. It sustains itself as cruel, but it is not a singular instance of cruelty. As we know, with everything, imagine being a university student and being a DACA recipient and all of that. So it's levels and levels and levels of intersection and complexity that further make a person feel unwanted. And how can one focus on their schooling or just their well-being when you're up against those odds? Thankfully, so how to support people? That's the takeaway. Is that a good friend of mine, brother from another mother, who reached out and said, "This cannot stand. Do you know a immigration lawyer that would be willing to talk to us so we can become better informed?" And it is saying, making that connection to how these policies are introduced, and the names and the faces, right? Because immigrants are the face of globalization. The names and the faces of everybody it affects in every corner of the world. So.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just uncertainty that surrounds with every law that comes in. So yeah, it's we have another question from Valerie. Um Valerie, would you like me to read it, or would you want to ask? Because you have your hand and you also have the question on the chat.
You could read it.
Okay, sure. If you were to immigrate today, would you do it, considering the current way of things?
You mean come back to the States?
Yeah.
Or else, or any part of the world?
Any part of the world. Or right now, let's just concentrate on America.
All right. Thank you for the question. I think personally, in my journey, if I ever did, now knowing what I know, I would educate myself about the racial history of the space. 2016, that fated election day, I genuinely did not believe the outcome would be what it was. And I had no background on either candidate other than what I was hearing them say. That was proof. What's covered in the newspaper, what's covered in the media. I was not a person who had yet allowed that part of her personal and professional self to develop. And I think I was, to my own detriment, so naive. And so, knowing what I know now, I know the reasons why I did it. And they were, if you would ask me 10 years ago, they're really simple. And they've gotten more and more and more simple as time has gone by. Would I still do it? I've fallen in love. I've got God babies that I adore, that I want to see them grow up. I've got siblings who I have the pleasure of working shoulder to shoulder with and growing with, and they make me a better person. and I know them to be here. So a part of me will always, always miss Honduras, but I don't want to give one up for the other. I want to be able to continue being I am a citizen of the world. We all are. And to bring the very best that I was raised with to every place I call home. But I will never, never, ever be as naive as I was before. And I will continue to educate myself, because that was a heartache of crawling into bed. Before it was announced, I crawled into bed and I cried myself to sleep, because everything that was being said was terrifying. And I could think of I just kept thinking of countless families that were feeling the same way, and that they would have to wake up and share that with their family members. And that's understanding the place that you're emigrating to is key. And so, because of my connection to this space, because of how much I've learned, because of that which I am passionate about, I would be sad to leave, but I also know that it's a life's work, whether it's here or it's any other part of the world, and I am committed to doing it. So sorry for the very, like I said, verbal confetti, but thank you for posing the question. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, for sure. So we are almost like about time. So thanks for that information, Jacqueline. So if anyone has any last thoughts or questions, comments, they can go ahead and, speak out or write it. That's what. So thanks to everyone who made it today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And stay safe and keep following the Facebook page and the website for the Interfaith Center for upcoming programs. And I feel like this is it. Yeah, thanks to Esther for taking the time to speak to us today. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for having me, and to all of you, my profound thanks and deepest affection.